Very good. It was obviously it was a happy Sunday here yesterday for two reasons. One, the team was very happy with our victory against a very good Pittsburgh football team on the road in conference, which is always hard to do. And then it's Florida State week, which always creates a little bit different atmosphere in the building, a little different sense of urgency. It's one of those games that you come to Miami to play in, to coach in. It's a legacy game. It's a game that you'll remember. You'll always be asked what your record is against Florida State while you're here at Miami. Looking back at Pitt, it was a game where every little detail mattered. And I think our guys during the week of practice last week probably had the best attention to detail and started to really see the correlation between these little things and victory. We're in a league, in a division, obviously, where we are going to play many, many close games. That has been the norm. I think the reason for that is because there are many, many really good defenses in this league. There's very good defense. If you think about the ACC Coastal Division, and you think about either the head coaches or the defensive coordinators that you face week in and week out in this division, there are some really, really good defensive coaches. Pat Narduzzi's got an outstanding defense at Pitt. What I was excited to see is our defense play outstanding. We talked in this setting a week ago about our tackling in the Georgia Tech game, and we talked about how we went back to work on that and trusted our techniques and our drills on that. We reduced that number to 8 in the game this past week, which is outstanding. And obviously we have a motto around here that we normally say the best tackling team wins the football game. And isn't it fitting that the decisive play in the game came through 2 missed tackles on KJ Osborne's touchdown, which was harsh on Pitt. They played outstanding on defense the entire day. But that's the difference in the game, where our guys tackled. And when you tackle, you make an offense drive the ball. And if they don't give up touchdowns from far away, they end up in your red zone. And again, for the second time in 3 weeks, our resiliency in the red zone to keep them out, especially at the end of a 14-play drive, which was an outstanding show of will by our defensive players, and force them to 3, kept us in the game, where obviously we could have won it with a field goal, but we ended up winning it with a touchdown at the end. The hidden element of this game, it's easy to just look at total yards, and that usually that stat lies. There's a reason for it, and it's because field position. There were 13 drives in the game. We averaged 15 yards better field position than Pitt. That's 195 yards that they had to gain more on offense than we did because of the field position. That came down to 2 elements. Number 1, turnovers, which were crucial in the game to get 3 turnovers, which we cashed in with 10 points. Pitt got 1 turnover, and our defense did, again, a heroic job to go out there and hold them to 3. So we won by 7 points off of turnovers, and then our special teams. And again, the first thing everyone talks about is Camden Price making the field goal, which was huge for us, a big shot of confidence. But our special teams dominated. Our punt game versus their punt game, our kickoff coverage, other than having the one that went out of bounds, our kickoff coverage was excellent. Our one chance we had at a kickoff return was excellent. We dominated in every phase you can dominate in special teams. And again, credit to their field goal kicker making a 55-yarder. That stuff is just, you don't see that week in and week out in college football. So in a game where everything mattered, I thought we got a lot of the little things right against a very, very good defensive football team on the road. And that matters because we're going again on the road. In a Miami-Florida State game, what do we know about that game? The last 3 years, it's been decided by 3 points. So when you factor that in, you factor a little bit of who we are, you factor in about sort of the craziness of 2019, the expectation of this coming down to anything other than who has the ball last and who makes a play or who makes a stop. I think we'd be foolish to expect anything less. So our guys understand, again, that the victory lies in the details. I think we are learning that. I think our leadership is beginning to emerge on this team and step up, and I love the way that we played connected last Saturday on the road. Sometimes we talk about there's some good things that can happen when you go on the road and you get in a hotel a little bit away from your comfort zone, and we'll do the same thing up in Tallahassee this weekend. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Manny, it's been a long time since both teams in this game have been something in 4 or something like that. Usually it's something in 1, something in 2. You know the history.
Right.
It's kind of a 2-part question. Is it still surprising to see you guys going through similar things like this at the same time? And 2, how much does any of that matter this week? Would it matter if you're 8-0 or 0-8 or 4-4? And does any of that really matter this week in particular?
To answer the second part of your question first, it shouldn't matter. It's not going to affect the way that we prepare. And we talk about that all the time, even when we were 2-3 or all the different steps we've been through. Why would that affect your performance? Why would that affect your preparation? It shouldn't, right? What you owe to the team And that's why you do all the investing you do in the offseason, right? You work really, really hard. And I think that's why our team has been resilient, because we worked really, really hard in the offseason. And when you work harder, it gets a little bit harder to surrender. If you don't put a lot of work in, it's easy to drop the rope, say, hey, this is too difficult, I'm going to stop. Our guys have worked really hard, and I think that's why our team, if anything, has come closer together with all the adversity. I don't know, I can't speak for them, but obviously they had probably their best performance this past Saturday, and then they've been hard to beat at home since the opener. 4 straight wins at home. So, look, I think, they're in year 2, we're in year 1. I think we're both kind of waiting for that kickstart to get things going, but I know they've got outstanding personnel. I know they have game-winning type players that can beat you alone on them. So they'll have our full attention. We really don't pay attention to what their record is, and it certainly should not affect us in our record.
Oh, hey, Manny. So I know you just said the leadership's starting to emerge, the team's coming together through the adversity. And I want to ask you, I think you referenced after the Pittsburgh game, it sounded like maybe, I don't know if it was a players-only meeting or something, where they sort of seemed to come together and say, this is what we are, or something like that. Can you sort of expand on that a little bit more, and maybe how much that meant not just you guys as a coaching staff, but to this program and maybe the future that it needs to get to?
Yes, I'm not going to go into super detail on what happened, because some of that's just for the people that were there on the inside. But I've been preaching, and we've been preaching as a coaching staff, of what it means to play for the Miami Hurricanes, and that standard that was set by those that came before us. And one of the key things is player accountability. Every former player who's come and spoken to our football team talks about how the locker room controls the locker room, and guys were accountable to one another. And some guys back in the day, they weren't fit to be a Miami Hurricane because they couldn't hold up to that standard. And that's why the hardest thing is when you face adversity, when the results don't go your way, if you think about it, the chorus normally goes away from player accountability, right? It usually tries to protect the players instead of doing the opposite. And I'm not talking about blaming the players for performance. Again, it comes back to preparation, the little things in terms of how we operate when we're inside this building. It could be something like going to class, just doing things right all the time and being compelled to do things the right way. And I think our guys finally started to get it. And there were some things said. Players did speak. There were some hard truths mentioned. I think the biggest concept that our guys understood is we are all tied to one another. Anyone's individual success is tied to our collective success. And if somebody's not pulling their weight, it is hurting their fellow teammates. And that could be the response. That could be the reason why, and again, this is not something that popped up in 2019. This has been the cycle that's been going on here for a while. And that could be the reason why, the win-loss record has been the way it's been. That could be the reason why guys sometimes get drafted where they should have been, you know what I mean? Because there's that different type of pure accountability that really you have to have that I think takes you to the next level. Now, again, I'm not going to pretend to snap my fingers. Remember after the Virginia game, I didn't want to come here and say, oh, all of our defensive problems are solved because, and it's not the same thing. We're not going to pretend like, we did this and kumbaya and it's all. But I think what we know now, at least, is we know the roadmap. And I think our guys understand what works and what doesn't work. That doesn't mean that everybody in there still is up for the challenge. Part of that will be recruiting, not just in terms of their talent, but in terms of their mentality and our type of guys that understand what it means to be a Miami Hurricane. But at least we exposed it. And the last thing I'll say is it wasn't me saying it. It wasn't our coaches saying it. It was the players saying it. And that's what had to happen. They had to set what it means to be a Cane, right? And you're either being a Cane or you're not being a Cane. And that was really cool for us to see a week ago.
Hey, Manny, obviously you guys won that game without a few key players. Wondering where DJ and Pink are in their comeback, and then health-wise, how did you guys sort of come out of that game? Didn't seem like there were anybody else who really got dinged up.
Health-wise, we came out really well, which is very encouraging. And the guys that you mentioned, we're very optimistic for getting DJ back. We're very optimistic for getting Pickney back. We'll have Jeff Thomas will be back this week. Tate Martell came back to practice last night. So we've got, hopefully if things go well this week, we'll have everybody available on Saturday.
And I guess Pink and DJ, did they practice yesterday? Or
our Sunday practice is so light in terms
right.
of what's going on. But, yeah, they were able to do some things out there.
And I guess this is a follow-up to what you said Saturday. I'll deal with the quarterback situation tomorrow or day after.
Yeah.
Where are you in terms of, the competition this week? Is there a competition or is there a starter?
What I'll tell you is we have a plan.
Okay.
Dan and I have sort of sat down and sort of mapped out what we are going to do this week and what's going to happen. And we'll do what we've done the last few weeks. We'll announce our starter, probably Wednesday after practice and sort of let everybody know. But we kind of have an idea of what we're going to, when I say kind of have an idea, we have an idea what we're going to do. So,
Okay.
in the back.
Yeah. Manny, you talked about, accountability, player leadership. Specifically at the quarterback position, can you just talk about where you feel like things are with accountability because that position is kind of thrust into that role no matter what.
Of course.
Where do you feel like things are in those ways with that position?
It has been at Miami for a long time, and if you go back to what we've said all year in terms of Jaron being our starter, we never wavered from that. But there is a standard, and there's a standard of preparation that, the second element to Miami Hurricane success, one is player accountability, two is competition, right? And the great thing we have in the quarterback room is we have competition. We have two guys that we know that we can win with. And Nikosi's preparation last week compared to Jaron's preparation, there was only one choice of who could start a quarterback for us in the Pitt game. Now, what a great thing to still have Jaron, right? When it wasn't going well and we felt like we had to make some better throws and catches, we were having some drops. It wasn't all on Nikosi, to be sure. But we really felt like we had to throw to win because Pitt's hard to run the ball against, has been against anybody they've played all year, for Jaron to go in there and to lead the game-winning touchdown drive at the end. So I will say this, and to finish up the point, one of the tasks that Dan Enos was put in charge of when he came here was to change the culture of our quarterback room. The way that they prepared, the way that they worked, the way that they, carried themselves around campus, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And again, this is part of building a program in year one. That is something that, because when you don't, and I always relate back to when I got here in 2016, there was no one to teach Shaq and Pickney how to work as a linebacker, right? They had, because there was not the senior example. The older guys, they passed the older guys. They had better work ethics than the older guys. That's why they played, the three freshmen. That's why they played. And the downside, and this is whether it's Nikosi or whether this was, Jaron, the downside, when you don't have that mentor that comes in and says, hey, this is how you take notes in a meeting. This is where you sit. This is how you prepare. This is how you watch film. It's never been passed down, so everything has to be coach taught. So now you're saying, hey, on this play, if they're in this coverage, throw it to this guy, like, wait, are you writing that down? Let me see your notes. Did you watch film? We have all the homework sheets. Did you watch film this past week? Why did you not watch film on Monday as we told you to watch film? Right? Do you really understand what it means? And that's the whole idea, because, now I have a guy, Sam Brooks can look at Shaq Quarterman and say, I want to be that when I grow up. And that's what the big time programs have. They have the older guys that set the standard that the young guys want to be them. So I think, to your point, that's all been a process of what we've been trying to put together in the QB room. And close on the way the position is played this year. If you look at our numbers throwing the football, we've made some great strides. So again, we're not all the way there yet, but I'm pleased with our progress.
From an offensive standpoint, the way you finished the game Saturday was very encouraging. And obviously you mentioned passing, you're 36th nationally in passing. Big picture, though, in some other areas, scoring is 84th, rushing is 114th, third down 129th. Are you disappointed at all in what you've done through two-thirds of the season offensively? And you would attribute shortcomings to what primarily?
Yeah, well, the stat that I care about the most is 4-4, right? So the question I ask is, has our offense given us a chance to win every football game that we've played, right? Or has there been a game where what they have done has given us no chance to win a game, right? Because the stat I care about most is wins. Through 8 games, we've had a chance to win every football game we played with how we played on offense. Obviously, we had 3 catastrophic turnovers in the first quarter against Virginia Tech. We came back and scored 35 points that day, came down from a 28-point deficit. The games even where we've not won, we've made big plays, we've made big comebacks. What I see is an offense from if you had asked me back in August what my expectation was, is an offense that fights, an offense that competes, an offense that always believes at the end of the game that no matter what's been going on, they have a chance to win. We've done that every week. We have 5 drives down the field in the last 3 games in the fourth quarter. 2, of course, came up empty versus Georgia Tech because of missed field goals, right? But the 2 that got 10 versus UVA, and then obviously the game winner versus Pitt this past week. So that's kind of cool, because now our whole team believes that. The numbers are the numbers. There's no doubt. To me, the one that stands out is third down, and part of that is when you have to drop back and throw the ball, and the other team knows you have to drop back and throw the ball. We're really good at third down avoidance, which means not getting into a lot of third downs. When we have gotten to third downs, our third downs have generally been longer yardage, where the odds are less. So those are things that, of course, that we always work on and continue to improve at. But everything else, I think, is trending upwards.
Hey, Manny. So you went to Florida State, and I know it's been a while. You've been pretty busy the last couple decades, but now that you're going back to Tallahassee as a head coach of the Miami Hurricanes, does that conjure up any emotions? I mean, you never seem like, the hail to the alma mater kind of guy, probably just because of your profession, but does it conjure any emotions going back to Tallahassee as a head football coach?
I mean, it was weird going there a couple years ago as defense coordinator. But, again, after I got my football career started at FSU, we went to NC State. So you kind of got over that. You went back 3 times in the 6 years. We were the first ACC team to win in Tallahassee back in 2001. And what you realize is that it's about people, And what I saw every year we were at NC State, the players that you knew, they all left. The coaches that you knew all started to leave. Coach Bowden's program, eventually kind of went away, and the less people that that's where that connection really comes from. Obviously, there's still good people up in Tallahassee who I do know, and that are either associated with the university or not. But I think it's like anything else. It's Miami, Florida State. I mean, this has been a game since I was yay big. This has been like a holiday for me. So it doesn't matter where I went to school. This is Canes and Knowles. I don't know if this is about as exciting as it gets for me.
Manny, you talked about players being accountable. If there are, it's such a big team. If there's a few players who might not be, into what you were talking about and might not be as evolved in that way, might not be as invested. How do you deal with that? Might be upset about things, or individually, or with the other players, or.
Well, if you think about life as a bell curve, right? There's always going to be every program in the country, no matter what their win and loss record is. There's going to be the bottom 10% that's not happy for some reason. That's just life, right? To be honest, we want those guys to come along. That's really not the ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about the 80% in the middle, right? And the 80% in the middle taking one step closer to being accountable, right? So that's what I'm talking about. There's always going to be sad guys, some disgruntled guys in any program. And to be honest, where things are going big picture-wise, sometimes that's getting encouraged more and more. The one I'm concerned about is the ones that want to be all in. They want to do right. There's just a little different thing. I've always said, coaching defense, there's just a little something special. How many times this fall have I used the word connectivity with our defense, right? When the defense plays like it's connected, there's just a little something different. And whatever you called, it seems like it always just works a little bit better, right? You're trying to build that now with the entire team, right? You're trying to build that thing where those guys come together. So really, whether that affects the sad 10%, there's going to be a sad 10%, and there's probably a sad 10% in this room too, right? But it's that 80% in the middle that kind of wants to do it, you know what I mean? And there's that to me is where you just turn that knob up a little bit more, and I think the team just performs at a little bit different level, And again, I say all that. We had a great week, right? It was still a coin flip game, right? So it came down to one play at the end. So it's not like, I'm not going to say like, oh, we had this meeting and all of a sudden now all of our problems are solved. We still had to scrap for everything we got at Pitt this past week, but we know the roadmap going forward of how it's going to happen here.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask about Alex Hornibrook, he pretty much lit up UM in the Orange Bowl a couple of years ago. I guess he had a concussion last year and couldn't play in the bowl game, but it could be that he starts for FSU.
Right.
And you faced him. Right. Any comments on him, on what you know?
Yeah, he played outstanding that night. He was great on third down in that game. Made some big time throws. The guys that they had made some big time catches against some outstanding. We had some really really tight coverage, and the guy put it in there. He was very accurate. Probably played as good of a game as he has. A lot of the guys obviously all the guys that he was playing with are gone, and most of the guys that we were playing with that night are all gone too. So he's an entirely different style of offense. So how much other than our, Shaq Horn might say, hey, I remember you. I don't know how much of what happened 2 years ago will factor into what happens on Saturday.
Just to clarify, you were a journalist, so the middle 80% is what's sad in our field. Just to clarify.
I wasn't trying to be judgy.
Happy to help. In basketball, we see streak shooters. In baseball, guys go 2 weeks without getting out. Cam Akers kind of seems like, if there is a streak runner, he seems like one of those guys. I know you have a defense that obviously loves a challenge, but what's different about that kid when he gets going? What jumps off the film when you look at him?
Well, if he's streaky, he's been on a streak since August. I mean, he started the year running really, really hard. He's a guy. I'll say this: he's a great example of the evolution of a player. I mean, he came in as a freshman. He was obviously very, very talented, very gifted. Had an outstanding freshman year. Sophomore year, for whatever reason, didn't seem like it happened. You don't ever know really what's going on behind the scenes, and sometimes that's expectation on these kids, right? Sometimes the worst thing that can happen is you have a lot of success as a freshman. You think things are going to be easy. Then again, I'm not trying to, but he's come back his junior year, and you can just tell by the way he runs. He's obviously trained very well. He's running extraordinarily physically. He's breaking through tackles, almost always falling forward. And I think that's the biggest thing I see right now is I just see his will and determination as a runner. He gets low to the ground. He's got a very low center of gravity and is just churning forward after contact. So he's a guy, you're not going to bump him down. He's a guy you got to wrap, and you got to get a lot of people to the ball this week. I mean, obviously it's no secret that he's their best player. He'd be almost everybody's best player in the entire country. They're gonna line up a quarterback. They're gonna hand it to him. They can throw it to him. They can give them the ball so many different ways. And he's not a guy. And a guy like you're not gonna hold him to like 7 yards, right? So to me, it's about again not giving him the explosive plays. Not allowing him to score touchdowns. Those type of things. I think will be the big challenge.
Manny, you also started Bubba Bolden in this game. I wanted to ask your thoughts on him. He obviously had the incredible play on the forced fumble. Oops. And and just aside from that play, just how he did and what you feel you have at safety now that he's more entrenched into his role.
Yeah, Bubba's role has been increasing more and more. The thing that jumps out to me with Bubba on game day is just his demeanor and attitude. I mean, he is just such a positive person. I mean, he's a guy that I think positively affects the teammates around him by just his tenacity, the way he plays. He's got that, sort of bravado around him, that just, because he's getting confident in what we're doing, so we're able to put him at dime, some and kind of change our third down package a little bit to get him on the field more. And Gervin still played a ton. I mean, we got some guys that we can rotate now. And again, Rob Knowles, made some outstanding plays in the game, some great plays in coverage and doing some things that he wouldn't have been able to do a couple years ago. So, the depth we have with those 4 kids at safeties gives us so much flexibility in how we choose to defend people. Thank you, Ray. All right, thank you all.